It was just another quiet afternoon in Dallas, the kind of day where life felt routine and predictable. But for Dennis Brown, that day would turn into one he would never forget. He had no way of knowing that within minutes he would be staring death in the face, trapped in a blazing car with no way out, his life hanging by a thread until a mysterious woman appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. Dennis Brown's life had never been easy. At just 22 years old, he was shot, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. For most people, such a tragedy would have meant giving up on living fully, but not Dennis. He learned how to adapt, how to fight through the challenges, and how to live independently. With a few adjustments, he even learned to drive cars equipped with hand controls. Driving gave him freedom, something he cherished after losing so much. But the same thing that brought him freedom was about to nearly take his life. That day, Dennis had rented a car from Enterprise. It wasn't the first time he'd rented that particular vehicle, but as soon as he turned the ignition, something felt wrong. A strange odor filled the air, sharp and chemical. He frowned, trying to place it. Then, before he could even react, smoke started rising from the front of the car. Within seconds, the hood burst into flames. Panic surged through him as the fire spread, engulfing the car in black smoke. Dennis tried to stay calm, but reality hit him hard. He was paralyzed, trapped in a vehicle that was rapidly becoming a furnace. He reached for his wheelchair in the back, but there was no way he could assemble it fast enough. Time was running out. "I think it was a wiring issue," Dennis later explained. "It started smoking. Then I looked up, and it's on fire." As the smoke thickened, his heart pounded. He knew he might not make it out. The fire crackled louder, flames licking closer to the driver's seat. And then, just when hope seemed gone, fate intervened. Not far away, 42-year-old Tammy Arrington was helping a friend move into a new house. She happened to glance out the window and noticed the car on fire. At first, she thought it was empty. Most people would have stayed inside, assuming firefighters would handle it. But something inside, Tammy told her she needed to check. She couldn't shake the gut feeling that someone was trapped. She rushed outside and peered through the smoke. Through the haze, she caught the faintest movement, a head shifting ever so slightly against the headrest. Her heart dropped. Someone was in there. "I just happened to see his head move just a little bit," Tammy recalled later. "And then I realized there was someone in there." Without hesitation, she sprinted to the car and yanked open the door. Flames roared as she leaned inside, shouting for Dennis to get out. But when Dennis looked up at her, coughing through the smoke, his words made her freeze. "I can't," he told her. "I'm in a wheelchair." The weight of those words sank in instantly. Tammy realized she had only seconds to act. She ran around to grab his wheelchair from the back, but quickly understood there wasn't enough time to put it together. The fire was spreading too fast. So she did the only thing she could. This petite woman, standing just 5'3", reached inside and pulled Dennis out of the car with all her strength. Step by step, dragging him through the smoke and heat, she moved him far enough from the fire to safety. The flames roared behind them, but Dennis was alive. Moments later, Tommy assembled his wheelchair so he could sit upright, just as firefighters arrived to extinguish the blaze. Dennis, shaken but alive, could only stare at the stranger who had risked her life to save his. But before he could get her name, before he could even properly thank her, she slipped quietly away. Dennis couldn't stop thinking about her. She had saved his life, and he didn't even know who she was. Determined to find her, he went to the news with his story, hoping she might hear his plea. His voice was filled with emotion as he said, "I'd like to appreciate her for her heroic act. She went into harm's way to save me, dragged me out. I'd like to thank her." And then, just days later, Tammy's phone rang. On the other end of the line, she heard a voice she would never forget. The same voice she'd heard calling out for help through the smoke and fire. But this time, it wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with gratitude. The first thing I said was, "Tammy, this is Dennis, the guy in the wheelchair," Dennis recalled with a laugh, and then we both just started laughing. For Dennis, that phone call was more than just a conversation. It was closure, gratitude, and a new beginning, all rolled into one. Hearing Tammy's voice filled him with joy. This was the woman who had looked through the smoke, who hadn't turned away when she saw danger, who risked everything for a stranger. For Tammy, it was humbling. She didn't think of herself as a hero. In fact, when people praised her, she brushed it off, insisting she only did what anyone else would have done. But Dennis didn't see it that way. To him, she had been his guardian angel. When they finally met again in person, the reunion was filled with laughter and tears. Dennis rolled up in his wheelchair, his smile wide and his eyes wet with emotion. He reached out his hand and said, "You saved me. Without you, I wouldn't be here today." Tammy shook her head modestly, but the bond between them was undeniable. Two strangers, connected forever by a single act of courage. The world soon learned of their story. News outlets across the country picked it up, sharing the footage of the burned car and Dennis's heartfelt words of thanks. Viewers were inspired not just because a life had been saved, but because of what it represented. That in a world so often filled with tragedy and indifference, there are still people willing to run toward danger, not away from it. "I'm glad he's okay," Tammy said, simply when asked about her bravery. Any human response? I think if they saw that, they would have done the same thing. But Dennis disagreed. He knew many people would have stayed back, afraid of the flames, afraid of the risk. Yet this woman, a complete stranger, had not hesitated for a moment. That, to him, was the definition of a hero. The two began to keep in touch, calling often and sharing updates. Dennis even invited Tammy and her friend out to dinner, determined to show her at least a fraction of the gratitude he felt. For him, it wasn't about repaying a debt, it was about celebrating the connection forged in fire and fear, and reminding her just how much her actions mattered. Despite his near-death experience, Dennis never lost his sense of optimism. "Life is beautiful, even from the sitting-down position," he said with a grin. His words were a powerful reminder that no matter how many obstacles life throws, gratitude and courage can carry you through. As for Tammy, she went back to her life quietly, never seeking recognition. But she carried with her the knowledge that, in one critical moment, she had made all the difference in someone's world. The story of Dennis and Tammy is more than just a tale of survival. It's a reminder of the ripple effect of compassion. One person's split-second decision can mean the difference between life and death. And for Dennis Brown, it meant he was given another chance, not only to live, but to laugh, to love, and to keep moving forward. So the next time you see someone in need, remember this story. Sometimes all it takes is one brave soul to change everything.